So, folks, today the DSA released their essentially their platform, and we're gonna talk about it. We're gonna go over it real quick. It's actually fairly intuitive. You know, the Democratic Socialists of America, our program. Workers deserve more. All right, imagine taking a day off from work in a future without capitalism. It might not feel as badly needed as it does now. You enjoy your work, it's interesting to you, you're well trained for it. You work as much as you are able to and no more than needed, and you would control your own labor and see it going to good use. It's not just a job to pay the bills. Speaking of bills, you don't really have them anymore. You have no debt. You don't need health insurance. You don't pay a mortgage or have a landlord because comfortable housing is a human right. Your retirement is publicly funded. Food, education, energy, medicine, and transportation aren't for profit businesses. They're common goods and utilities. Okay, enough about bills. What do you do on your day off? Maybe in the morning you walk your kids to school, run errands, or go to a doctor's appointment. In the afternoon, you might play a sport, practice a new skill, read, plan a trip. In the evening, you could meet up with friends or family and eat together. Maybe go to the movies or down to the park. These are all familiar everyday activities. A socialist day off could be like any good day now. But what if you were free to spend your time how you like without worrying about cost or dreading going back to work? What if you didn't have to think about paying rent or loans at the end of the month or saving for college or affording groceries? What would that be like? It's been said that it's easier to imagine the end of the world than it is to imagine the end of capitalism. But just because it isn't easy to imagine now doesn't mean we shouldn't try to make it happen. Workers deserve more. How did we get here? The world is in chaos, but for the bosses, it's all going according to plan. We can see their plan in the countless heartbreaking images coming out of war zones like Beirut, Gaza, and Tehran. We can hear it in the rumble of bulldozers making their way to build detention camps and data centers. We can feel it in the air as the summer heat becomes unbearable and in the pits of our stomachs when faced with the price of gas and rent. We're promised magical technology with AI, but in reality, the bosses lay us off and track our every move. The billionaire class is dividing workers against each other, and it's making us desperate and miserable. The political and economic system under which we live is built on private ownership and profit at all costs. As capitalism fails to solve problems of its own making, it turns to right-wing authoritarianism. Big business makes deals with the government to line their pockets, and politicians stoke hatred between working people. Instead of offering real solutions to unemployment and the cost of living, they attack immigrants, communities of color, and trans people. Rather than fixing our broken healthcare system, they push snake oil and circulate conspiracy theories. The Republicans are in on it, the Democratic Party is asleep at the wheel, and both are funded by the same criminal class of billionaires and war profiteers. Democratic Socialists know that no one has to live like this. If we lived in a classless society and governed ourselves, we could freely build a world without war or poverty. We could build a world where no one suffers for their race, gender, or religion, and everyone is free, equal, and cared for. Building this world is the guiding star of our movement. When we labor for our common good instead of private profit, we can all have a secure and dignified life and use our time and talents as we wish. To achieve this future, our class must organize. The Democratic Socialists of America is building a party whose goal is a democratic society of the working class. Our enemies are not just individual bosses, but the entire global system of capital, not just this or that cop, judge, or president, but the entire anti-democratic structure of our society. We are workers fighting to transform society, to win the battle for democracy, draft a new constitution, and create a democratic socialist republic. DSA has written this program for ending capitalist oligarchy and creating a real democracy. Some of these demands may be won under our current system, but we know complete victory will require building a new society from the ground up. We can push these demands to their furthest extent today so we can fight for their fullest realization in the socialist future. Join us. What are we fighting for? Thriving working class communities, freedom to flourish, healthcare for all, housing for all, finish Reconstruction. Let's fucking go. That's what I like to see. End mass incarceration and police immunity. Feminism for all. Green New Deal. Working class foreign policy. End the U.S. war machine. Free Palestine. End blockades, embargoes, and sanctions. Abolish ICE. Working class democracy. Democracy for all. A real democracy. A democratic Congress. Economic democracy and democracy at work. Thriving working class communities, freedom to flourish, Medicare for all. Yeah, what are some of these things? And if I click on them, does it just bring me? Yeah, it just brings me down here. All right. Let's see. Freedom to flourish. Expand public resources to support recreation, learning, and social spaces accessible to all. Hey, you mean state level funding to, like, manifest third spaces where people can hang out instead of just oh God. I was actually going to talk about this on stream, and then I just was like, nah, it's too niche. This is actually the perfect place to talk about it, right? Which is, there was a local newspaper out of Charlotte, North Carolina, complaining about roving youths on the streets, like teenagers, like just showing up and like hanging out. And it's like, where do you expect them to go? Like, parents are like, go outside and play. Like, you like, please, for the love of God. And when they're outside, where are they to go? What third space do they have the money to go to? Malls are dead. Parks are sometimes inaccessible. The answer here is there need to be third spaces for young people to go and hang out at. Like, that's it, full stop. When they're talking about, social spaces accessible to all, they're talking about third spaces. Establish paid family leave for all workers, a 32-hour work week, hell yeah, with full pay and benefits and a living minimum wage. Provide free, quality public education from pre-K to college and cancel all student debt. Healthcare for all, I think pretty self-explanatory. Housing for all, pretty self-explanatory. Finish Reconstruction, end the legacies of slavery and colonialism, reinforce anti-discrimination laws, honor all treaties and tribal sovereignty, enact reparations, and massively invest in good jobs, quality housing, and infrastructure in neglected minority communities. End mass incarceration and police immunity, pretty self-explanatory. Feminism for all, what the hell does that mean? Socialist feminism fights for queer liberation and the freedoms of all working-class women, stop gender violence, and end policies that oppress bodily autonomy and intimate life, including patriarchal restrictions on abortion, childbirth, and child raising, gender expression and transition, marriage and divorce, ban sex discrimination, and ensure fair compensation and support for all forms of labor, including care work. Hell yeah, I can get behind that. Green New Deal, self-explanatory, but let's just take a look at it anyway.
Thank you for showing me this. I didn't know they updated the platform.
Absolutely.
I owe you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I believe this just dropped today. For the Green New Deal, workers must lead a democratic transition to a green future, pass a federal jobs guarantee, implement massive investment in sustainable publicly owned energy and transit infrastructure, phase out the use of fossil fuels, reclaim and repair our Earth's resources for all. Hell yeah. Working class foreign policy, end the US war machine, free Palestine, end blockades, embargoes, and sanctions, abolish ICE, legalize migration, grant amnesty for all immigrants regardless of status, provide a path to citizenship for all permanent residents, and end visa caps and quotas. Fuck yeah. Working class democracy, democracy for all, extend full voting rights to all permanent U.S. Residents and restore the right to vote to incarcerated people and people with criminal convictions, establish statehood for Washington, D.C., and recognize the right to self-determination for all U.S. territories and colonies, expand and protect voting rights and end voter suppression. Hell yeah. 1000%. A real democracy for the working class to govern. We need a new political system, end political corruption and legalize bribery, get rid of lobbyists, dark money, citizens united, publicly finance all elections, abolish the Electoral College, replace the president and the Supreme Court with an executive and judiciary chosen by and subordinate to Congress. I'm actually, I could get behind like Congress, like as an action. If Congress was an actual democratic body, I could get behind Congress appointing like a president and like a Supreme Court. I do think that like the Supreme Court was established by Congress, so Congress already has authority over the Supreme Court. It just needs to exercise that. That being said, a democratic Congress, replace the two-party system with a multi-party democracy, expand the House of Representatives, implement proportional representation, and ranked choice voting in all elections, and abolish the Senate. Hell yeah. The Senate is, by its nature, anti-democratic. Economic democracy. Hell yeah. Public ownership of the largest corporations, essential industries to ensure democratic control and accountability to the people, enact aggressive wealth taxes on the richest individuals and corporations to spend on public goods and infrastructure. I do wish, like, this is my one, like, really big point of contention with this platform so far, which is that I don't necessarily agree with public ownership versus worker ownership. You know?
So many
I think
died
there's
for
a
us
difference.
to get to this point. Hearing these words, I feel solidarity with the future, but also wish we could have our dead see this. Many people murdered or took their own life to get here.
Very true, Peace Earth. Very, very true. We've come a long way, and we have a long way yet to go, but this is really heartening to see. But my quibble here is that public ownership is not worker ownership. And this is something that I take a great deal of umbrage with when it comes to when it comes to other countries like the Soviet Union nationalizing different things and arguing that that's public ownership. I don't believe that. The government owning your labor is very different from you owning your own labor. I do think that there are certain industries for the public good that should be nationalized. And those would be unique circumstances. But, like, for example, I think energy should be one of those nationalized fields. Like, I think that, like, the people who run your power plant should just be the government. It's kind of weird that we've allowed them to just be private corporations when their cost-cutting measures are starting wildfires across the country. Democracy at work, support union members who organize to reform caucuses, democratize their unions, take political action. Not a single thing said in here about democratic worker co-ops, but we'll get there. We'll get there. We'll get there. Inshallah, brothers and sisters, we'll get there one day.
I'm curious, what do you consider the point when you are socialist rather than capitalist? I've always seen it as a spectrum. I also recently figured out I'm technically a market socialist, so it's been on my mind.
I mean, my litmus test, right? And Brutus Magnuson, thank you for the $20 dono.
I've been pushing for municipal broadband and cellular nationwide since 2015.
Hell yeah. Also, Sake Tanuki, thank you for the 5 tier 1 subs. But I would say that the line between a socialist versus capitalist is who ultimately owns and controls the means of production, right? And so when I talk about how it's important that we have worker ownership and control, that's what I mean. That's why I take issue with this particular platform. Because at the end of the day, I think that when you work at a company, when you work at the factory, you should own your labor. You should own the proceeds of your labor and get to vote in the context of the factory with how those proceeds are used. Like, I do think that there are ways you can do it. There are democratic worker co-ops in America right now that are very successful. However, there's a difference to me between, the state owns it and decides on it with like some kind of mandate for the wider good. The workers democratically owning and representing themselves within the system.
But who controls the means of production? Reddit.com/r/OakBuddyJack.
Do we actually have an OK Buddy Jack now? Okay, I clicked that link. We don't have an OK Buddy Jack. But thank you for the 5 tier 1 sub, Sake Tanuki. Maybe one day we'll have an OK Buddy Jack meme production Reddit. I know nothing about Reddit. It won't be me. I want an OK Buddy Jack. You guys can go make an OK Buddy Jack. It's just not going to be managed or facilitated by me. So I guess where I'm at is that when I talk about labor in the context of like our generalized economy, our economy should be primarily driven by worker ownership. And that's what I consider to be us achieving socialism. And I think that within that space, there is room for competition between, democratic socialist, no, not democratic socialist, democratic worker co-ops. There we go. Between democratic worker co-ops and capitalist run businesses. I just think that based on the data we've seen, a competition on an even playing field between democratic worker co-ops and traditional privately owned businesses, democratic worker co-ops are going to win, right? Because where does, if you're a worker, where do you want to work? A place where you own your labor and have a say over how it's used, where you can advocate for your working conditions, where you are considered one worker, one vote within the company you've signed on to, and like you have agency, you are paid better, your business is more local on the ethical level. I think most people would choose a democratic system to work under than a totalitarian one. And so I guess kind of where I'm at is that I think that ultimately this would create conditions that would transition the economy fully into, democratic ownership. I think about companies like Costco too, where it's not quite a co-op, but the employees have more say than employees typically would. Yeah, and I think that that's better than traditional corporations, but I do think that ultimately, when we talk about unions, when we talk about unions, and when we talk about, we really listen to our employees. We give our employees stock options. When we look at these when we look at these two other alternatives, they're not as good. Workers might be treated better, but they aren't. It isn't the same level of agency, and it's not the same level of economic benefit. And that's kind of where I'm at, right? Because I think what is key to the success of democratic worker co-ops is the fact that they are democratic, is the fact that not only are the working conditions better because they are centered around the people who work there rather than profit at all costs, but they have agency as well. Those two things in the research I've seen on democratic worker co-ops are the two things that matter the most. Agency within the company to advocate for oneself, to advocate for one's working conditions, and also to be treated better and to be paid better. So I think that, obviously there's going to be a spectrum in there of hey, some capitalist companies treat their employees pretty well. Some mom and pop shops treat their employees pretty good. But there's a difference, I think, between a system that relies on a few outliers to beneficently facilitate, living wages for their employees versus a system where what we have now, which is that, companies prioritize profit above all else. And I think given enough time, capitalism consolidates to such an extent that mom and pop don't exist anymore, And so I think that social and democratic ownership of the means of production is very important. And I think that while unions do a really good job, they're kind of duplicating bureaucratic structure. And I feel like you actually make it so much more efficient by just having the union structure and the business structure be the same. Now, what would it look like for the biggest corporations if they're worker co-ops? Great question. My answer to that would be to look at groups like Mondragon, where essentially they are large in scale and scope. Mondragon isn't my favorite go-to example because of how they classify who is and is not an employee, but for the sake of this argument, what it would look like is essentially a traditional corporation, except instead of being owned by investors and venture capital and all that jazz, instead, when there are those quarterly board meetings, the people who show up and vote on decisions and put forward changes to the course of the company are the workers. Instead of investors being bamboozled, it's workers showing up and making decisions collectively via a democratic process. That's the difference. The difference is, instead of dipshit shareholders who are alienated from any of the labor that's actually done in the company, making all of the decisions. Instead, it's the workers who work at the company. And like, you know, I've talked about this in the past. I have like a flow chart somewhere where you have essentially Christians Against Dinosaurs. Thank you. Glad you like it. Loving the t-shirt, Riverboat Jack. Thank you for being a member. So I guess what I'm saying is I just think that this is objectively a better way to go about things. Devil's advocate, what about the capitalist who's able to replace labor of the democratic worker co-op with automation/AI? How does the system account for that? I don't think people can. My gut reaction to that is that AI is a bullshit buzzword right now that is not going to play out financially in the long term. And also, there's no job, there's no company that is fully automated. And so when we're talking about what about the capitalist who's able to replace the labor of the democratic worker co-op with automation/AI, unless you're talking about like just a capitalist has like a far more efficient company, one, I don't necessarily see that being a threat to local democratic worker co-ops. But two, even if it was, I like in this system, it would rely on people being willing to work for that capitalist over working for a democratic worker co-op where they get paid more and they have more agency to do what the fuck they want to do. Oh yeah, companies have been trying to replace their staff permanently with AI, but it's gone hilariously terrible every single time. Anyway, I feel like I've been babbling about this, and I just want to say I believe in democratic worker co-ops specifically because I think it is important that if democracy is good enough for our system of governance, it's good enough for the system we spend most of our time in working within day after day. You know, if democracy is the best way to run, you know, the most powerful nation ever to exist on Earth, then hey, maybe it's a pretty okay way to run, you know, your local mom and pop diner. Maybe it's a pretty okay way to run, you know, your local hardware store. Maybe it's a pretty okay way to run practically any company you can think of. If democracy is what has made America great, then let democracy flourish in a million different forms across the United States. Let people try as many different evolutions of their business model with democracy as possible. Let's find the best ones that work the best. You know, it's one of the reasons why my proposal to bring us to a world that is powered by democratic worker co-ops relies on gathering information before creating what I've termed the economic vice to, you know, spur that capitalist competition until it's very clear that there is a predominant winner, which of course would be the democratic worker co-ops. But that's me, and I know I've seen comments asking me to elaborate on the economic vice in the past. Just to really sum that up, I have a number of different policy proposals to get us to a point where it makes it easier to create democratic worker co-ops for working class people who are wanting to make their first business or jump into a business endeavor. And there would also then be policies that would affect the largest companies in America, specifically with things like Bernie Sanders' right of first refusal for workers. This is a policy he proposed maybe like 8 years ago. But the idea being that if a company wants to sell to another company, first they have to offer to sell the company to their workers. And I think that that's honestly a really great proposal. Stuff like that, or if a company needs a government bailout, it should be turned into a democratic worker co-op. I think that these two things could then create a kind of pressure from the top on down and a pressure on the bottom coming on up. And I think that given the fact that democratic worker co-ops survive better in harsher economic conditions, they're more efficient, workers are happier, they get paid more. I think given all of these things, that the competition from the bottom would functionally beat out anything that capitalism can bring to bear, because capitalism is fundamentally profit above all else. And democratic worker co-ops are about the people who work there. And I think that that is a fundamental difference in thinking, a fundamental difference in priorities, and fundamentally something that we need within our, mode of production. So that's all I have to say about that. I know that was quite the rant. Worth noting today that Mike Johnson then got pretty heated about the DSA platform dropping. Let's take a look at what he had to say about this. Gotta get sound.
Carlos Jimenez, for sharing your incredible life story. Thank you to Chairwoman McClain. We're a little more animated these days than normal. I brought a little fire to our House Republican Conference meeting this morning because I feel like Carlos does. I believe everything is at stake right now. This isn't campaign rhetoric. It's not hyperbole. You see what's happening around America. I am often reminded these days of the writings of the founders, the warnings of the people who put together the principles that made us the greatest nation in the history of the world. They warned us against times like this. In more recent times when we were kids, in the 80s, Ronald Reagan used to remind us all the time, you hear me repeat it, you have to understand freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. It is not passed along in the bloodstream. Reagan said it must be fought for, it must be protected, it must be taught, passed along to the next generation.
Boy, I wonder what he's about to talk about.
So that they too will understand these principles that hold us together.
This sounds pretty serious, guys.
I'm somewhat of a historian. I'm a constitutional law attorney. I know many of you we're all amateur historians here. You must be if you work on Capitol Hill. You watch and follow these developments. There's a small number of times in the history of America where the actual experiment in self-governance was on the ballot. The idea that we would preserve a constitutional republic, one nation under God, a government of, by, and for the people, all that is in question right now. For the first time, really, in my lifetime, this is a real question the American people have to decide in November, in a midterm election for Congress and Senate. It's not something that we would have projected. I hoped and prayed it would never come to this, but here we are. The barbarians are in the gate. Last night I did a little...
The barbarians are in the gate? Oh no! Mike Johnson, did you roll in a giant horse? Did you open the gates and roll in a gigantic wooden horse that was offered as a gift by the socialists? Oh no! Mike Johnson, no!
We had a big group, actually, of VIPs.
Logan Hill, thank you for the gift of
I don't
membership.
get to do that very often anymore, but took a tour of the Capitol, a quick one. We wound up on the House floor, and I pointed to them, as you may have heard me reference this often, I think of it a lot. Why did Congress put "In God We Trust" above the rostrum of the Speaker's podium there in the center of the House? It's inscribed in the marble, as you know. You can't miss it when you walk in the chamber. It's the first thing people notice when they walk in at eye level and see it there. And I pointed out that in the visitor's guide to the House, it explains that. It says it was put there in 1962, and it says in the visitor's guide, it's been published for many years, it said Congress voted to place that there as...
Man, look at him bringing the fire. I'm so fired up right now. I'm practically bored to tears.
Rebuke to the Soviets because of their philosophy during the Cold War. What was the philosophy of the Soviets? It's what...
Is he saying that the U.S. is about to get dominated by Goths?
Yeah, honestly, the more visible the Goths, the better. We could call them Visigoths.
It was just outlined, same philosophy of Cuba. The brutal dictatorship there that robbed him of his childhood, and so many countless others. They've lost their lives trying to flee from that brutal dictatorship. The philosophy of the Soviets during the Cold War was Marxism, communism, socialism. That's the thing. And
well, during the Cold War, it was Stalinism. Definitively very different from, it purports to be derived from Marxism, but Stalin really had his ulterior motives going on when he put that one together.
When Congress voted in 1962 to put that there, it was right after your childhood in the late 50s when the Castro took over and destroyed Cuba. It was a completely foreseeable result. We were fighting it during the Cold War on distant shores in the USSR. And Congress was resolute on that. They were all united.
You know, they always talk about Cuba and like, oh, Castro ruined Cuba. But like, hey, why did Castro stage a revolution in Cuba? What, you know, I can't seem to recall. Something about plantations and slavery? I don't know. The world will never understand because, as we know, no one can look up Cuban history.
And they understood that that's not who we are as Americans. The reason we are the greatest nation in the history of the world, the most free, most successful, most powerful, most benevolent, you hear me say it all the time, the reason that we are the greatest nation is because we were built on an entirely different and opposing set of values. Congress put In God We Trust above the rostrum because they wanted to remind everybody who would ever serve in this body in Congress that there is a huge distinction between us and the Soviets' philosophy. Communism, Marxism, socialism, all this begins with the premise that there is no God. It's a totally different philosophy. In our declaration that we just celebrated, 250 years on July 4th, the nation's creed, as you hear me talk about all the time, the second paragraph, we hold these truths to be...
Guys, we're so benevolent that we cut the government to the bone and destroyed all of our foreign aid programs to the tune of, you know, billions of dollars, and that in turn has already killed hundreds of thousands of people.
Be self-evident that all men are created equal. Our rights come from our Creator God. They do not come from the government. The communists believe the opposite. They believe that the government is the state.
Also, can we just take a moment and like marvel at the audacity of this man to be like, communism overthrew Cuba. Hey guys, who here thinks that Cuba was a democracy when Castro overthrew it? When Castro overthrew Batista, was Cuba a democracy? No, it wasn't. Batista literally suspended the Cuban constitution and ended elections and declared himself a dictator. That's why Castro led a revolution. The economic conditions in Cuba were so oppressive and so exploitative that when the only method of social change was ended, the democratic process, the only alternative left was taking up arms. You know the old saying, no taxation without representation, the battle cry, the rallying cry of the American Revolution was the same shit in Cuba. But they constantly talk about Castro as like, communism. It's just like, fuck you guys. Really weird how you leave out those important details earlier on in the story, though, isn't it?
Is God. The state is the one that gives you all your rights. And you know what? The state can also take those rights away. And that's exactly what happens. It's inevitable. Communism and this philosophy has led to the murder of tens of millions of innocent people in the 20th century alone.
Out of curiosity, how many millions of people has capitalism killed? I don't think we want to start playing this game, Mike Johnson. I don't think we like the numbers game is something that a lot of capitalists think that they want to play until they start really reckoning with the fact that, oh wait, a lot of wars are fought specifically to secure resources for capitalist exploitation. Oh wait, the United States literally set up slave states in order to exploit slave labor, in order to like mass manufacture bananas. Oh wait, we literally slaughtered women and children in order to steal their land in the form of manifest destiny. Wait, the scramble for Africa was entirely fueled by the desire to get material for capitalist exploitation? Oh no! Wait, you mean to tell me that the subjugation of the entire Indian people was due to desire to exploit them for capitalist growth? Oh no! Wait a minute, that would mean we would have to assess the mass death toll from colonialism as a whole and add it to the death toll of people who are dying just on a yearly basis from not having healthcare or being underinsured, or who are dying of diabetes because like all of our capitalist products that maximize their profits are poisoning our bodies. Uh-oh. Wait, that'd be really inconvenient. Nobody talk about that.
It is a nightmare. It is a trail to certain death, okay? And that's why we're speaking in such stark...
Your ancestors didn't conquer the world for you to not season your food. That's true, which is why I make a butter chicken that is hot as fuck. There we go. Also, my ancestors didn't conquer the world. They were largely like wheat farmers, potato farmers, a couple itinerant preachers, and one concubine to the to some kind of Swedish nobility. But that's basically my entire family tree.
Terms, because we need America to wake up. We're not even, look, 35 years ago, Republicans and Democrats in Congress, when I was coming up in, the Reagan years, they were fighting communism on a distant shore. Now it's here. But in Congress, they all agreed on that. They obviously knew that we had to fight communism. And so what they were doing here for domestic policy, that was foreign policy. Domestic policy, they were arguing over, marginal tax rates and the shades of regulation and how large the government should be. There wasn't a huge difference, a chasm between the two parties. Those days are gone.
Like, he's here throwing a 10-minute long hissy fit over the fact that he read the DSA platform, which reads essentially like, what if only good things happen and nothing bad happened? What if we only had good policies that help people and, no bad policies? What if instead of choosing to, scrape and kowtow to the billionaire class, what if we, told them to go fuck themselves and, we're able to take care of our well-being and have time to pursue our interests? And nothing bad can happen, only good happen. Exactly, Statman. You understand the core conceit of socialism. And he just comes out of here and he's fucking mad. And he's fucking mad. And the reason this entire speech so far is lacking any substance whatsoever about the actual policy positions of the DSA platform, the only reason he's not listing specifics is because he doesn't have shit. He can offer Republicans nothing.
With communism, we can finally go.
Oh, I bet I know what this is.
Space! I'm escaping to the one place that hasn't been
Yes.
corrupted by capitalism. Space!
I'm gonna play this again on screen because it's just Tim Curry. Look at Tim Curry almost break here. Look at his acting chops. He did this in one take. You can tell. He did it in one take, and he fucking breaks almost. Look at him.
I'm escaping to the one place that hasn't been corrupted by capitalism. Space!
You can hear him chuckle before he says it. And it just makes it so much better to see his face. Just his little his little chuckle face. I love it. I love it so much. Well, they didn't pay him a whole lot to do the FMV scenes of a video game. Also, Sake, thank you for the 5 tier 1 subs. Very much appreciated. Where's this from? It's from a classic video game series called Command and Conquer, which is a reimagined version of the Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union, where the United States masters time travel and the Soviet Union embraces blimp technology and also psychic super soldiers. And honestly, it's the Command and Conquer, Red Alert, 1, 2, 3, top tier video games. And honestly, if you like that level of camp that you just saw in that cutscene, that's literally the entirety of the games.
Right now, domestically, we are arguing, we are debating, we are fighting. The election will be over whether we're going to maintain our freedom in a constitutional republic, the greatest experiment in self-governance in the history of the world, the longest surviving constitution on the planet, the nation that everybody wants to emulate, and everybody wants to come here.
Everyone wants to come here. Yeah, maybe more people would even want to come here if we had 32-hour work weeks and you could just take time off and you had guaranteed housing and healthcare, I think actually more people would want to come here.
Seal our borders so they won't flood over them. We're the only nation in the world that has that distinction. We're the last great superpower. We are the greatest nation in the history of the world. We are fighting right now
We are the greatest the greatest nation in the history of the world, but we cannot provide free healthcare. I don't know. I feel like that's a stunning indictment on what you think the greatest nation in the history of the world can do.
Congress over whether we're going to maintain our status as a constitutional republic or we're going to trade that in, dismantle the foundations, and go down this dark road of death to communism. That is the question on the ballot this fall. Now, DSA published their platform. I hope you're all covering. Oh, I hope you're writing it.
See? All of this is about fucking DSA. He's losing his shit here, and he can't offer anything concrete. He can't offer anything concrete to the people in that room or to constituents or to anyone else because Republicans have nothing to offer. All they have to offer is like, hey, remember back in the 1980s when everyone hated communists? Remember that? Ooh, don't you just hate communists? Yeah, communism bad. But like, there's no argument here about like the policies that DSA put forward. There's no argument here about the policies being championed by elected DSA endorsed candidates like Zoran Mamdani. There's not any argument here because fundamentally Republicans can't offer anything good to constituents, to other Republicans, other than bribes. You know?
What I'd give for someone to ask. What asterisk did you and your son watch this week, Mike?
One day we will have a press with a spine, and someone will ask Mike Johnson about the pornography accountability app he and his son use. There's no argument at all. It's just pointing and screaming. Exactly. Honestly, Shootbang nails it on the head. Like, he's coming off really weird and agitated because what every single Republican and Democrat was really hoping was going to come out of DSA National was like some kind of tanky bullshit. Something that they could vilify, something that they could prop up as like a boogeyman for what the left was going to do. And if you actually look and read through it like we did, you suddenly realize, uh-oh, that sounds pretty reasonable. Uh-oh, that sounds pretty desirable. Uh-oh, maybe I would like to live in a world like that, you know? And that's a big problem for establishment Democrats, and it's a big problem for someone like Mike Johnson, because right now, progressive, leftist, DSA folks are running away with the bag. They're like, the energy is behind them rather than the Chuck Schumers of the party.
People are aroused. I haven't seen people so aroused in a very, very long time.
And they're not aroused about Chuck Schumer or Mike Johnson.
In depth about their platform. I read it out at an event a few weeks ago, and they've made an ad mocking me reading their platform. Now, they didn't put the clips with the worst parts of it. Representative Jimenez.
Wait, I'm sorry. Wait, is he talking about getting owned?
An event. I hope you're all covering. Oh, I hope you're writing in depth about their platform. I read it out at an event a few weeks ago, and they've made an ad mocking me reading their platform. Now, they didn't put the clips with the worst parts of it. Representative Jimenez just told you, Carlos told you that. Well,
I'm sorry. I was not aware of this. I need it. I need this. It's on Facebook, but you know, that'll do.
Okay, here's just a DSA, the Democrat Socialists of America. Okay, here's just a sample of what they're about. Abolish the Electoral College, replace the two-party system with a multi-party democracy. Implement proportional representation and ranked choice voting in all elections. Establish public ownership of the largest corporations and essential industries to ensure democratic control and accountability to the people. End all military and economic aid to Israel. It sounds so... DSA, the Democrat.
Fuck, that went hard. That was so good. The fact that you would bring this up to prompt us to look it up if we weren't aware of it is such an ungodly self-own. You look so shitty in that, Mike.
Of course, they want to pack the Supreme Court, and they want a unicameral legislature. They want the House to run everything, abolish the Senate, because they believe the House would be run by Marxists, communists. They'll be able to run the table on everything. They want to remove the president. What they also want to...
Guys, I'm not gonna lie. This has me hope-coring so hard right now. I'm hope-maxing, as the kids say. You know? Like, the fact that Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House in Congress, feels compelled to come out and be like, guys, actually, the real threat right now in America is communism. It's actually socialism, guys. You know, I was taking a break from looking at porn with my child the other day, and turns out they made an ad about me that was very unflattering, using my own words against me. Really made me look like a chumpus. And I didn't really appreciate that, and it made me look really uncool, and it made them look really cool. And it's a really big problem. Yeah, so the socialism's bad now, okay? Don't do it. Not even for a little bit. Wait, what? Kermit the Frog? Look, we don't have Jordan Peterson anymore, so Mike Johnson gets a vaguely Kermit-y voice.
Do is abolish all borders. They don't want any borders. They want mass amnesty granted to anyone who can come onto our shores without exception, even for terrorists and hardened dangerous criminals. Okay? They don't want prisons. It's in their platform. They want to remove the carceral state, they said. No prisons. They don't want to fund the police.
Well, I mean, I don't necessarily think that removing the carceral state is the end of all kinds of, like, prison. Well, like, prison as it exists now in the United States needs to be overhauled completely, because it doesn't work. Recidivism rates are high. You know, the violence within prisons is completely unacceptable. I would say it goes into cruel and unusual forms of punishment when we take it for granted. And, like, frankly, disturbingly, something I've talked about for a long time is that prison rape jokes are so common, and the idea of prison rape in America is so normalized that you will find, like, don't drop the soap jokes in, like, children's films. And, like, that's pretty fucked up, actually. And hey, maybe if our prison system is so bad that even children are talking about how, hey, don't drop the soap, otherwise you'll get raped, maybe we should overhaul that system. And for those of you being like, what children's stuff has ever done that? SpongeBob, Shrek, there are a lot of different children's properties that have made this kind of joke.
This is not a game. Everybody needs to understand. These crazy little mini Mamdanis who are popping up all around the country, they are a danger to you and your family.
That's right. Once you let one Mamdani take root, suddenly the mini Mamdanis will get you.
This is not a game. If they promise you free stuff, there is far more beneath those promises that even some of these people do not understand themselves.
And that's what I learned by playing this new gotcha game I got on my phone. Now, it's not a porn game by any means. However, you do help a young and plucky and kind of sexy anime waifu who's both a woman and also, I guess, kind of a horse, compete in a set of different racing challenges in order to be the fastest horse girl around. And, you know, it's not a porn game, but, like, there are some gotcha elements that, you know, you start to see bigger and bigger bazongas the more money you drop on those loot boxes. But it doesn't technically count as porn, so my son doesn't know I play it.
And so we are here as the Republican Party to stand on the founding principles of the greatest nation in the history of the world. It is our duty to do that. And we're doing it on behalf of all of you, even the journalists who don't agree with our policies all the time. You better agree on these principles, because it's what keeps you free. By the way, it's what keeps...
What? I love, by the way, that he's, like, he's trying poorly to say, you know, America sharing these principles is what keeps us all free. But when he says sharing these principles is what keeps you free, that sounds so much more like a direct threat. You know? Like, you better be in ideological lockstep with me, Mike Johnson. Otherwise, you're not going to be free.
The press free, okay? This is essential for your...
Man, gotcha games are fun. Y'all are just hating for real. They're all fun and games until suddenly you've lost $500 on the gambling mechanics.
well-being and your family. This is not a game. This is not our father's Democrat Party. This is not... We're not arguing over marginal tax rates anymore. We're arguing over whether or not freedom is going to survive. And that's why we're so serious about this. Look, I'm a happy warrior, man. I like to get up and have fun, but it's not a fun time. We're in a war. We're in a philosophical war to save the greatest nation in the history of the world. And we take it very seriously. So we recruited extraordinary candidates. We are raising record amounts of money that is necessary to win these elections. And we understand everything is at stake. Ronald Reagan used to quote Abraham Lincoln, and he reminded us that America is the last best hope of man on the earth. As was asked here very well, very articulately this morning, if not here, where? There is no answer to that question. This is the best. Not a perfect nation. We're still in a process of making a more perfect union. But we are working every day to ensure that the principles of individual freedom and limited government and the rule of law and peace through strength and fiscal responsibility and free markets and human dignity are maintained, because that is the formula that makes a successful, free, happy people and a successful nation. I'll take a few questions. Yeah.
Speaker Johnson, there's been a lot of discussion about what's going to be included in this reconciliation bill. Can you walk through?
Okay, I don't really care about the questions though. You know, I did, however, do some digging. I found, I did find the original, the original game that Mike Johnson was talking about during this. Okay, it's called My Horse Prince. Okay, I hope you all enjoy this look into Mike Johnson's world. Okay. Here we go.
A normal ranch in a normal city. I came all the way to the beautiful countryside for a single purpose.
Welcome to My Horse Prince. You are his new caretaker. Train him and care for him until he becomes the best he can be. I'm counting on you. An unlikely companionship with the most unusual horse.
What's with this horse?
And a romance she never could have anticipated. Enjoy compelling gameplay and an immersive story for free when you purchase My Horse Prince from the App Store. Remember, your prince will always be waiting for you at the ranch.
Hello, welcome.
I accidentally clicked Hassan video when I was trying to pause it. Hello, welcome. Oh no. Oh no. Was that Hassan? Yes. Anyway, back when I was a video game journalist, I covered My Horse Prince, and it lives permanently in my head. And that's what you have to thank for that nightmare fuel. Definitely the game that Mike Johnson is hooked on, though. It's all he can think about. Anyway, if you got anything out of this, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the comment button. Leave a comment. Let me know what you thought about all this. Because, folks, you guys make this show possible. Could not do it without you fine folks. And do drop those subs and donos if you feel inclined. And get involved in politics, folks. The Republican Party, the establishment Dems, they've never been weaker than they are right now. Get involved in your local politics. Join your local DSA. Join your local Dems. Kick those corporate Democrats out of there. Get some pro-working class Democrats in. Folks, if you need help taking your first steps to do that, join our Discord. Reach out to GamerG for help with joining your DSA. Reach out to Dragonfly for help joining your local Dems. And if you want to do some door knocking and phone banking, text banking, that's non-local, consider joining up with Progressive Victory. There's a link down in the description for them. And you can get involved in the effort to push for democratic progressives all across the country. So go check that out as well. And last but not least, folks, check out ImogeneOlivia.com, gender euphoric lingerie designed from the ground up for trans femmes, tested with cis men, cis women, non-binary folks. It is comfortable, sexy, non-tucking lingerie. Check it out, ImogeneOlivia.com. And we just got a full restock and new sizes and new color. So go check it out, ImogeneOlivia.com, and link down in the description. Let's keep on going.
Riverboat Jack is going to town. All the viewers gather round. Twitch and YouTube is where she streams. All that content is bursting the seams. Politics, gaming, and plenty more. Her sense of fashion you'll adore. So grab your stuff and hop aboard. We're going straight to Jack's Discord.